you and I are biologically wired to exceed the limits of what we once believed possible in our lives. In this episode, we'll discover how our super inner technology works, as well as the ancient technique that uses this technology to create the most advanced states of consciousness known to exist. When I was in school in the 1950s, 60s, and the early 70s, I was taught that there are 4 brain states that we operate in between our waking everyday reality and the deepest states of sleep. Well, new discoveries have changed all that. They show us that now those 4 states are only part of the picture. Now we know that there are at least twice that number of brain states, and I believe very possibly even more. Now here's what I mean by this. Typical brain states of the past began at the bottom of the scale with the very slow delta waves, the long waves that range between 0.5 and 3 cycles per second, or hertz. These are the waves that we typically experience in our really deep states of sleep, sometimes when we don't even know that we're dreaming. The next brain state is a little bit faster, but it still is a slow wave as well. It's called the theta brain state. And these are long waves. They range between 3 cycles per second, or 3 hertz, and 8 cycles per second. So this is the brain state that we experience as like light meditation, or we begin drifting into sleep and in the typical dream states. And it's also the brain state that is associated with very deep states of healing. And that's going to be important for where we're going as we go through these new brain states. Well, following the theta brain state, or the alpha waves that range between 8 and 12 hertz, 8 and 12 cycles per second. Alpha, that's where we experience a very deep relaxation. And when we first begin to meditate, when you close your eyes, you take those first few deep breaths and you shift your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, this is the state that we begin to drift into. And from alpha, the next is the beta, the very common brain state. It's typically ranging between about 12 and 36 cycles per second, or 12 and 36 hertz. And this is our typical everyday waking brain state. Hopefully the state that you're probably in when you're watching me right now. New discoveries now have changed all that. And what I find really fascinating is that these discoveries were made possible through documenting the meditative techniques of Tibetan monks. It was only when scientists went into the monasteries in Tibet and they took, at that time, relatively primitive equipment, and they began to monitor the brain waves of these monks, that they discovered that something was happening in their bodies that was beyond what had been documented in the past. I had the opportunity to see the monks, the nuns, the abbots actually practicing these traditions, actually moving into the states. And I also had the opportunity to see the attempt to document what some of these monks were doing. And I say and emphasize the word attempts because it didn't work as well as researchers had hoped. They could obviously tell that something was happening. They couldn't really get a handle on what it was. So it was only when they were able to invite those monks and nuns and abbots from those high altitude monasteries in the Tibetan plateau into the laboratory here in the United States. And they used really sophisticated equipment that was too big, too massive, too heavy to transport all the way into Tibet. And they were able to use scanning techniques, MRIs and CT scans, to actually see what was happening in the brain and the body of these people as they were going through this process. That science was able to document the advanced brain states that I'm going to share with you right now. So all of this is relatively new. It's a relatively different way of thinking about it. So the researchers measuring the activity of these monks and using this new technology, they were surprised when they discovered, first of all, a brain state above the beta brain state. It began where the beta brain state ended, at 36 hertz, and it extended as high as 44 hertz. But this was news to the researchers at the time. So this new brain state, they said, well, we don't know what to call it, but it has different characteristics. They were looking at the waves from the EEG. And from 36 to 44 hertz, the characteristics of the waves are very different, so they couldn't call them high beta. They needed to call them something. So following the notation, the standards for the notation used in the past, they called this new brain state gamma. This is the gamma brain state. And the characteristics of the gamma were fascinating. One of the characteristics is the sense of well-being, the sense of unity, the sense of connectedness with all things. It is a system where we feel like all systems are go, that we're in the zone. Sometimes athletes achieve this state and they may not even know what to call it. But the more the researchers explored the higher brain states revealed by the monks and the nuns, the higher the numbers appeared to go. And they discovered yet another range of waves that had gamma characteristics. But this range extended far beyond the gamma waves that had been measured in the past. It went, listen to this, it went from 44 hertz all the way to 100 hertz. Look at the range of this state, 44 to 100 cycles per second. But it had the same characteristics as gamma. So it was a form of gamma, a higher form of gamma. So this newly discovered brain state is now called hypergamma. And it provided the deepest forms of insight and intuition that the monks were accessing at the time. So the researchers, they were thinking, well, you know, we've now reached the end of the brain's capacity. There must not be anything else. And when they felt that, further research revealed yet another, even higher brain state. And this again was revealed through the meditation, certain kinds of meditation, certain sects of Tibetan monks have been trained in a specific way. And this is a rare brain state that I'm going to talk to you about. It exceeds everything believed to be humanly possible in the past. It exceeds hypergamma. It begins at the high end of the hypergamma at 100 hertz. Listen to this. It extends all the way to 200 cycles per second, 200 hertz in the human brain. It's called the lambda brain state. So what happens in the lambda brain state? Well, it's in this state that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain becomes synchronized. And in that synchronization, it allows tremendous levels, tremendous states of self-regulation. Now, for example, you may have seen videos or documentaries of monks meditating in sub-zero temperatures, in the ice, in the snow, in the high elevations in Nepal or Tibet. When you see monks doing things like this, this is happening in this extended brain state. And I've seen where not only are they doing this, but they will drench a cloth, a cotton or a linen cloth, with water and wrap themselves, the loincloth, and wrap themselves in a wet cloth before going out into the sub-zero freezing temperatures, or sub-freezing temperatures, sub-zero and sub-freezing. And they will sit on the ground, on the bare ground, where typically in sub-zero temperatures, our bodies, the warmth of our bodies would create a layer of ice and it would freeze and we'd stick. That's not what happens to these monks. They begin to self-regulate their body temperature. And they self-regulate to the point where steam begins to come off of the linen or the cotton cloths, and they actually dry on the bodies of the monks. The monks regulate their temperature so that the cold is not a problem for them. So what is astounding is all of these discoveries sound right now, I want you to know that they don't end with the lambda brain state. A new brain state now has been discovered. This one, it's on the other end of the spectrum. Remember we said that the delta brain state was the long, slow wave, deep sleep, no dreams. That's an extremely low brain state below delta that has recently been discovered. Now listen to this. It begins at only 0.5 cycles per second, 1/2 of a hertz. And it ranges downward to zero, to nothing. It is possible for humans to engage in a brain state that brings the brain activity down to a level of zero. Nothing is being emitted from the brain. This seemingly bizarre brain state, it's associated with what we would call suspended animation. When the monks are in this state, there's no detectable heartbeat. They cannot detect a pulse. There's no detectable breathing. But I want to tell you, the monks are very much alive, and they are very conscious within this state. Now, I'm sharing these discoveries with you. We're going somewhere with this, because if you think about what I'm saying to you with regard to the brain states, think about what this means in terms of our conversation about the divine matrix. That matrix is a field of energy. And once again, I'm going to emphasize this again and again, because we're so conditioned to think of ourselves in the field. It's not that we're in the field, we are the field. The field is every atom of our bodies constantly emerging in these quantum pulses from this field, and our ability to interact with this field is determined by our heart and our brain state. So what I'm sharing with you are brain states that now give us access to places and experiences in this field in ways that science has never recognized in the past. Now, I'm not saying that ancient and indigenous peoples didn't know this. Of course they did. I mean, the monks have been doing this for at least 1,500 years. But it has not been documented scientifically. So I'm sharing all of these discoveries because of yet an additional discovery that now links these brain states, the highest of the high and the lowest of the low. It links these brain states in a way that tells us even more about our relationship to the matrix. Scientists have recently discovered this very curious link between the low of the epsilon, remember it goes from 0.5 hertz all the way to 0, and the high of the lambda that goes all the way up to 200 cycles per second, 200 hertz. As different as they are in frequency, this is so interesting. They both allow for precisely the same state of consciousness. Now think about that. As different as they are, from the highest state to the lowest state, different ways of getting there, they both bring us to precisely the same state of consciousness. The one difference is that when we achieve the low state of consciousness through the epsilon brain state, we achieve it through a very drowsy state that typically would allow us to facilitate a deep sleep. But when we access the state of consciousness through the very high state of lambda, we don't get drowsy. We go into this state of consciousness in a very full and in a very awakened state. So I'm going to offer you a little formula that you can think of and carry in your lives when you want to optimize your opportunity for your greatest potentials. And the formula is simply this: heart-brain coherence plus the gamma brain state equals all systems go. When you create the heart-brain coherence, and into that space of coherence, you drop the gamma state of consciousness. Now you have become a very different person. You have transcended the judgments of your peers, of your society, of your culture, of your family, and you are opening the door to a deep, deep, deep communication with the field of energy, the divine matrix, and that is where your mastery begins. So it's from this place of extraordinary abilities that we actually learn to hack the matrix. We learn to hack the matrix as we are no longer subject to the laws of physics as we know them today. We're no longer confined to the limits of space and time. It's from this place where we create the prayers that influence the healing of our bodies in a very powerful, very profound way, as well as the world beyond our bodies. Through embracing the deepest truths of our relationship to the divine matrix, we are given the key to transcend the rules of physics and time and space that seem to limit us in this world. In doing so, we truly hack the divine matrix as we express our highest levels of mastery. In the next episode, we'll discover the prayer code from a 2,500-year-old text that gives us the instructions to breathe life into our most heartfelt creations. I want to thank you for joining me for today's program. Be sure to tune in for our next all-new episode of The Divine Matrix, Bridging Time, Space, Miracles, and Belief.